The Seduction of Pessimism. You'll see why gloomy headlines feel smart, yet quietly drain your wallet. Author your fellow traveler Eli Rivera. Stay with me for 10 minutes, and you'll stop trusting doomsday talk as an investment guide. I used to brag that I could spot the next crash ahead of everyone else. The habit started in the drive-thru at my first job in 2007. The store manager leaned out the window and told us the stock market had dropped 500 points that morning. He said if we had any sense, we'd stuff tips in a coffee can and hide it under the bed. The way he said it sounded so practical and wise. For me, the warning stuck like a splinter. Every pay night, I pictured Wall Street in flames and stuffed my 20s into that rusty can. The coffee can felt safe because it never argued back. It never whispered, markets usually climb over decades. It just sat there quiet while I fed it the small money I earned. A year later, the world really did look broken. Banks folded and neighbors lost houses. My can seemed like a miracle. My friends who kept buying small slices of index funds looked wrecked. One buddy showed me his balance on his phone and laughed at himself for trusting the future. I sat smug in my lawn chair that summer. I told him cash would protect me when everything else fell apart. He didn't argue. He just kept shoveling 50 bucks into the market every payday like a robot with no off switch. My confidence grew louder every time the evening news flashed red arrows. I remember thinking the pessimists were the only adults in the room. Reporters agreed. They love the word crash more than the word climb. It keeps people watching. Optimists sound like cheerleaders, one anchor joked. Pessimists sound like professors. The line got quoted everywhere in our town. That quote wrapped around my brain until it felt like logic. If professors were smart, pessimism must be the smart stance. So I stayed in that mindset for 8 long years. I bought nothing except groceries and coffee can deposits. One crisp morning in 2015, I drove past the same friend's apartment. He was loading mountain bikes onto a new hatchback. He looked lighter than I remembered. He asked if I still kept my money under the mattress. I laughed but felt a tug of embarrassment. Inside the apartment, he showed me the graph on his screen, the shaky market he bought into after the crisis had tripled from its bottom. He admitted it hurt every month at the start. Some mornings he expected his account to read 0, yet the checks kept clearing and the numbers kept rising. He never tried to predict the next headline. He only believed that humans build more than they break over time. The concept sounded childish to me back then. I told him his gains were luck, not vision. He asked why my coffee can had stayed the same size while his life looked bigger. The question hung in the air like smoke. I drove home replaying his words. I pulled the can from the closet and dumped the bills onto the table. They looked tired and wrinkled, and exactly like what they were, pieces of paper shrinking in value each year because of inflation. The next night, I opened a brokerage account with shaking hands. I set an automatic transfer of $200 every payday to buy a total stock market fund. I didn't tell anyone at first. My pride wanted to protect the story that pessimism had saved me. Still, every automated deposit felt like stepping onto a frozen lake I kept expecting to crack. The headlines obliged my fears. 1 week oil collapsed. Another week, a European nation threatened to bolt its union. Each crisis arrived wearing the costume of permanent doom. Friends at barbecues repeated the anchor's joke about sounding smart by sounding bleak. Yet my account quietly grew. The growth was not magic. It was simply companies solving problems while I did other things. After 18 months, the balance crossed $90,000. My chest warmed in a way the coffee can never gave. I began reading deeper into market history. I learned downturns come about once every 7 years and last roughly a year and a half. I also learned that optimism wins roughly 3 out of every 4 days when you zoom out far enough. The data is public and boring, and therefore ignored. People keep repeating that pessimists sound like professors, because the statement feels clever. It provides no testable scoreboard. So I stopped repeating it. I replaced the line with a new private joke: optimism pays tuition for patience. The tuition feels high during bad months. Headlines still roar, but the long-term syllabus favors builders, not doomers. Today, I keep a small cash cushion for true emergencies. The rest streams into those index funds the way my friend once did with his robot-like discipline. The balance stands much higher than my coffee can ever reach. More importantly, the habit freed my mind to build a side business instead of guarding fear. That side business is now my main job. None of it sprouted from trusting catastrophe. The seduction of pessimism is real. It wraps panic inside the costume of intelligence. It promises respect at dinner tables. But wealth rarely moves into the home of someone who worships the next crash. Wealth favors the steady hand that waters a garden through seasons. Pessimism is seductive because lowering expectations feels safer than raising them. Real safety, however, arrives through participation, not retreat. Summary: pessimism feels smart because it lowers expectations and reporters love bad news. Yet real wealth usually rewards people who keep buying small slices of progress even when headlines scream. Markets fall often but rise more often over decades. Balance realism with hope by holding emergency cash and investing the rest automatically. The price of optimism is short-term discomfort. The reward is long-term compounding.